welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. You good old boys in Canada, and we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January the 29th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, I was sitting around here today and I kind of lost track of time, so I went and looked at my calendar.
Yeah.
And I realized it's the Friday before the Friday of the Super Bowl, so I have to get myself all straightened out here over the next week.
Yeah.
But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. They're already straightened out.
Yes, they're always straightened out, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your North California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing. I think I've been pausing a lot lately, Big C. We've had a lot of rain. Lately, we're having sunshine. Hopefully, we can have more sunshine on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, when we think about the loss of our great veterans in this country, Charlton, on a daily basis, over 2,000 a day commit suicide. That's a national disaster that we're going through. Our past administration paid no attention to the plight of our veterans. At least our current president took a small step towards that today, Charlton, by visiting Walter Reed Hospital right outside of D.C., where many of our veterans go that are wounded, Charlton, after while they're serving in duty.
Yeah.
The president went over to speak to these veterans because he spent time in Walter Reed. His son has spent time in Walter Reed, Charlton. And this is what we need to do as Americans. Pay attention to our veterans. Find a way to stem the suicide that has stricken so many families of veterans who have served in our great military over the decades. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. The president took a step inside of Walter Reed today to show his concern about our great veterans, Charlton. And more Americans need to also voice that concern.
Big C, I love doing our part, and that's all we can do. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And you can definitely get our veterans some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV, on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king Barry Bonds. And when you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple. We're trying to recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country to put people back to work, just like car dealerships do it, sports teams do it. And you know what? TV can do it too. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Quicken Loans on the wholesale side. Also, I want to thank Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports all over the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You know, Big C, I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that have happened in the world of sports, and I know we're getting ready for Super Bowl 55, and a lot of people are putting money on Super Bowl 55. But it's great that we have gotten at least as much as we can through COVID to get to the point where we can have a kickoff. Hopefully, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, football was never going to end, especially the NFL, because of COVID, Charlton. You might have had delays and moving around of games, but it's too much of a financial entity for it to be stopped because of that. Even when you have players that come down with COVID-19, there are always going to be enough players in reserve to fulfill those roster spots, Charlton, because you're not going to close down a billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, they're not going to close it down. They do move things around. And I know I was talking to a friend of mine today. He runs Cal High Sports. His name is Mark Tennis, and he knows almost every NFL football player from the high school level. When they were in California, they started that service back in 1974 up in Northern California. And we were talking about some things that happened in the world of sports. He went back to the days of Tom Brady when he was playing at Cerro High School in San Mateo, and also went back to Aaron Rodgers when he was playing at Pleasant Valley High School in Chico, and also Josh Allen down at Fireball High School in Central California. Ironically, Big C, most of these players, Tom Brady was not really an all-star player, but he was like one of the top 4 or 5 players in the Bay Area. And then Aaron Rodgers, no one really knew about him. And the same thing for Josh Allen. He went to Reedley College down near Fresno, and then went on to Wyoming. But it's just like everything else in life. You have to keep making the progress from high school to college, if you need to, junior college, and then if you can go Division I, no matter where you are, they all started not being well known. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, everybody cannot be a 5-star recruit, Charlton, when you're coming out of high school. There's different levels.
Yeah.
I mean, you're always going to find a diamond in the rough regardless of where you go. I mean, a lot of 5-star recruits fall by the wayside. We see them never even making the NFL.
Yeah. There's a guy, his name, I may get the name wrong, but his name is David Henderson. He actually played baseball. He was out of Dos Palos, California, in Central California, just about 10 miles away from Fireball High School. In that small farming community in Central California, they produce so many state and section championships that a lot of people may not know about unless they really follow California high school. But another kid that came from a small town. And then we were talking about a kid by the name of Mercedes Lewis. He played in the Green Bay Packers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers NFC Championship game. He went to Long Beach Poly, and he was playing high school football. In 1999, they played a game, Long Beach Poly versus De La Salle of Concord. It was the first time in the country that ESPN televised the high school champions, number 1 versus number 2. And can you imagine still playing football and you were in high school in 99, now you're still playing in the NFL, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at the Super Bowl, Charlton, there's several players that are in the Super Bowl that were during that time, Charlton. They were in high school, you know, and now they're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, now they're in the Super Bowl, Big C. So I want to just think about what we talk about all the time. I don't really know the COVID numbers, you know, nationwide, but I do know that the NFL has done as well as it can. They've navigated the COVID-19 season. Now we're in 2021. They've given out 954,830 tests at the cost of $100 million, but they haven't canceled any games. They've only moved them around. Big C, that's pretty remarkable. But if it takes $100 million to do that, a lot of leagues just have to fold or wait until next season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, $100 million, Charlton, when you talk about the NFL, is just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
You got 32 teams splitting the cost. You're talking about each team paying basically $3 million, Charlton, to keep the season going.
Yeah.
A mid-range salary contract for a player.
Yeah, a lot of guys, if you think about touchdown Patrick Mahomes, last year's Super Bowl MVP, he had his barber tested with COVID-19 just to ensure that he had a safe haircut. I think we see him on TV commercials all the time. You also look at, I don't know if I should say Lions quarterback, because I guess he's going to be elsewhere, but he's not signed with anybody yet. So Detroit Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford, if you recall, he spent a week isolated in a hotel and traveled by private plane to Minneapolis and started a game without taking a single snap in practice. So all of this talk about different players and what they do, I think you look at Sam Darnold. He put his extended family through NFL protocols so he could visit them for Christmas. And then a lot of coaches, Big C, you've noticed even for TV, a lot of the football broadcast, even basketball, there are guys doing games from home just to make sure that they're doing it safe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, players have not, and coaches and broadcasters, Charlton, haven't wanted to put themselves in harm's way. They've taken every precaution because they have the financial ability to do that.
Yeah.
And when you have the network who will set up a broadcast studio in your home, it's really no cost out of your pocket.
Yeah, not a cost out of their pocket. And hopefully, I don't know if anyone, and I might not know the whole stats on this, but I don't think anyone's been hospitalized in the NFL from COVID, even though we know it's been happening all throughout the country. So the NFL is doing something right, and hopefully maybe mainstream society can take the lead from what the NFL is doing as well. Big C, when you think about NFL football, man, it takes a lot of money to do a good game, and they're not even allowing a lot of fans. I think they're going to allow about 20,000 fans in Super Bowl 55. With few Super Bowl 55 tickets available, prices are skyrocketing, Big C. Supply and demand sets the prices for Super Bowl tickets. And the lowest supply in history, when you think about it, is causing for Super Bowl 55 prices to skyrocket. The average price of a Super Bowl ticket this year is $14,110. That's a huge increase from Super Bowl 54 last year, when tickets went for average $5,500, and that's still a lot of money, though, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's the biggest difference, Charlton, when you're looking at only 25,000 seats being available versus 65,000 seats being available. You're going to have to raise the ticket price to offset the financial loss in that situation, Charlton. But, this is how Super Bowls go every year.
Yeah.
The ticket price goes up more and more. And especially when you get a situation like you have this time. Tom Brady making history, being in his 10th Super Bowl. That's something that will probably never be accomplished again by an NFL player. I mean, there's been several players in 6 and 7 Super Bowls, Charlton, but none has ever been in 10, and Tom Brady has done that. And then you're also, on the flip side, you have Mr. Mahomes trying to become one of the few quarterbacks to ever win back-to-back Super Bowls with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I think I got a little bit spoiled on just assuming that people are going to go and pack the stadiums. Now there's fewer people that are allowed in, and the ticket prices are like 3 times average. The average Super Bowl ticket changes hands at least 4 times, but when it's resold 3 additional times, Big C, you'll see it go higher and higher, and the prices are going higher than any Super Bowl ever. I don't know if scalpers can get away with this Super Bowl, because I don't know the protocol, but I know they're testing everybody. I believe they're testing them before they go into the stadium, and I don't know if that test has to go back to when you actually purchased that ticket from an official NFL seller. Big C, your thoughts?
No, you don't, Charlton. As long as you have a legal ticket, and I've been to a few Super Bowls, and I've watched the scalping of tickets at Super Bowls, and they do change hands on a regular basis. People will sell them at hotels. They'll sell them outside the stadium. You have to be very careful, Charlton. The NFL has their own policing department, and depending on the city that you're in, there's scalping laws that apply also.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to wanting to be in the game, people will pay for their demand to get inside. I've seen ticket prices go for 5 times the face value at a Super Bowl.
Yeah. So when you were selling those tickets at 5 times face value, Big C, how were you making sure you didn't get caught?
Well, you have to be very cautious. You're moving through different parties. Matter of fact, I had a friend that was selling tickets, but, they were from their employer, and their employers, the tickets were in the boxes, so they were very skeptical about selling those tickets. They didn't even want to go to the game.
Yeah, they didn't want to go to the game. As much as I've loved the Super Bowls that I've been able to attend, my first one was down in San Diego at Qualcomm. It was actually the San Diego Qualcomm Stadium, Denver Broncos. It was John Elway's first Super Bowl championship. They beat the Green Bay Packers, who was trying to repeat. So that repeat is a very difficult thing to do. And when I think about it, Big C, when you looked at touchdown Brett Favre back in Super Bowl 33, and you had touchdown John Elway, it was Terrell Davis that ran for 200 yards. He ran for 200 yards in the game. He only played in 3 quarters because he was knocked out of the game by not concussion. He had migraines. So 200 yards rushing in a football game. You had 2 marquee quarterbacks. He did it in 3 quarters, and he did not get the MVP of the game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, people were thinking that John Elway deserved it because he had been there 3 times prior, Charlton, and got embarrassed in those Super Bowls. So they wanted to guarantee that he at least got one Super Bowl MVP in his career.
Yeah, I thought that was bad. I know the owner said, this one's for John. And Darrell Davis was like, I'm the one that had 200 yards rushing in 3 quarters, but it's all fair in love and war. I got to ask you, we were just talking about this yesterday and about athletes using their power. And not to be rude, but if you don't use your power, then you don't have it. You can pretend and hope that people are going to be nice to you, but most people are not nice. They take advantage of you if they don't think you're smart enough to stand up for yourself. I think about it, Big C. You think about Deshaun Watson. Really, is there really a place for him to go if he gets traded? The NFC is not technically one place, but think about this. Just give me a chance to talk about it. The NFC would be great for the Texans if they would not have to worry about Watson possibly dominating their conference for years to come. So that's the talk about him maybe ending up in an AFC team, maybe Indianapolis or even Pittsburgh. Those chances seem very, very slim and not a wise business decision at all, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, I mean, Deshaun Watson is still property of the Houston Texans. It's going to be very tough for him to facilitate a trade. He can say that he does not want to be with the organization, Charlton, but they've made a huge investment in Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
It would be stupid of the franchise if they decided to trade him within the AFC conference. I mean, even if I'm Deshaun Watson, I would not want to stay in the AFC. There's a guy named Patrick Mahomes who is going to be controlling that conference, Charlton, for the next decade if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
So that's always a hurdle that you have to go through.
Yeah.
I think a move to the NFC would be viable. Houston may only have to play against him once every 2 to 3 years, and they would not have him coming in to their house and showing off.
Yeah. You know, it's hard to repeat, and even if they're trying to avoid him, it's just not likely that people can go 3 in a row. Maybe they'll get the repeat. But I remember, as far as trying to stay in a conference where you can avoid Patrick Mahomes, I believe it was Joe Montana and the 49ers, they were trying to repeat. They actually tried to three-peat, Big C, and they were at home, and they were knocked off by the New York Giants. I think Joe Montana had his back, he was hit pretty hard. The backside had some issues that knocked him out of the game. And Roger Craig had later fumbled, and the Giants recovered. They went down to kick the field goal at Candlestick Park in San Francisco, and that 49er team was trying to make destiny, trying to get a three-peat. So even if Kansas City does it this year, there's no chances that you can go 3 in a row. It's just so difficult, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's no reality that you can ever go 2 in a row, Charles.
Yeah.
Think about the limited number of teams that have won 2 consecutive Super Bowls. Yeah, I think it's about 7 that have won 2 consecutive Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a forgiven thing that any team will get back to the big game. I mean, it's never a forgiven that you will ever get back to the Super Bowl once you win one. Look around the league and see how many teams have never made it back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is an opportunity to go out, and you make history every time you go to the Super Bowl, win or lose.
Yeah. So there's a lot of talk, again, that if Watson playing in the NFC would mean that he would not need to go through Patrick Mahomes and get to the Super Bowl, because if you think about it, Mahomes and the Chiefs, they will be there for years to come. But at the same time, you get better by playing against the best. And what we're seeing this year is so unusual that Tom Brady would change from the most dominant team in the NFL in the last 2 decades, the New England Patriots. And the time that he steps away from them, they don't make the playoffs, and he goes to a new team that hadn't been to the Super Bowl in over a decade and a half, and they're going right back his first year. Imagine if the Bears, the Rams, or the 49ers, with Watson as their quarterback, going forward, I would really love to see him come out to San Francisco going forward. Each team would become a force and would battle for the NFC title for years to come. But there's also other teams like Washington, and I mean, they're going to be very solid because their defense is legit. The Minnesota Vikings, but they may have to get rid of Kirk Cousins. The Detroit Lions, we know Matthew Stafford's already packing his bags. And the Atlanta Falcons, that could take a huge step forward with Watson as their quarterback, but they would have to get rid of Matt Ryan's salary. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you could trade Matt Ryan for Deshaun Watson. You're going to get a pretty fair salary matchup there, which would not hurt each team salary cap-wise. But it's also what you're going to give up on the back end. You have to give up more than just your starting quarterback. Just like with the Los Angeles Rams and Jared Goff. I think those salaries would go across fairly well even, but you also have to give up some players in trade. And I don't know if the Rams have the trade capital because they've given up so much to get Ramsey and a few other players out there into Los Angeles, as well as the Falcons. I think they have the number 4 pick in the draft, Charlton. But it's going to come down to Houston. Deshaun Watson does not control his destiny in this situation. Players over the decades, I've heard time and time again, being discanted about where they were and wanting to leave. Jamal Adams, we saw it last year with the Jets when he forced the trade to Seattle. But the Jets were able to get 2 first-round draft picks in exchange, so that was easy. One body for 2, actually 3. They got 3 draft picks out of it. It's not always that easy when a team does not have the draft capital to trade in exchange for a high-profile player, Charlton, to move on to their roster.
You know, when people talk about that and using your power, and people might think, well, what is Deshaun Watson going to bring to a team to help them become an instant challenger for the division that he plays in? Well, they were just in the AFC Championship game last year when they had one of the best receivers in the NFL. Somehow he got shipped out to Arizona, and Watson didn't know about it. He threw for 4,823 yards, Big C. His average yards per attempt were 8.9 yards. Now, people might think that's not a lot. Touchdown Patrick Mahomes, his average yards per attempt were 8.1. And then touchdown Tom Brady, his average yards per attempt were 7.3. So when you think about 8.9, it's the most yards per attempt in the NFL this year. He completed 382 out of 544 passes. Big C, he completed 70% of his passes, 33 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. That's why he's so highly coveted in the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's coveted because he's a young quarterback, Charlton, with a lot of upside. I mean, the statistics don't always tell the story. Those numbers, even though he led the NFL in passing yards, there were 16 quarterbacks that made the playoffs, Charlton, and he did not make the playoffs. So you got to look at those quarterbacks that made the playoffs. You compare him to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was the better of the 2 quarterbacks. He averaged more yards a game passing than what Deshaun Watson did. Tom Brady was right behind him, Charlton, statistically. And those 2 guys are in the playoffs. I mean, numbers mean one thing, but winning means everything. And when you look at Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, they're in the Super Bowl.
It's a lot because of the team that you're around. Oftentimes, Jameis Winston, what did he throw for 5,000 yards last year, but the team was nowhere near the playoffs for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time. The only thing they really improved was the quarterback position and timing together. I mean, that's just important, the timing and everybody on the team. And just to keep in mind, going into Super Bowl 55, Big C, yards on the season, again, Patrick Mahomes did not play in the final week of the season. They were resting him up, Big C. 4,740 yards on the season. Tom Brady, 4,633 yards on the season. Remember, these 2 guys are in the game together. Patrick Mahomes, average yards per attempt, 8.1 yards. Tom Brady, 7.6. Now, this is something that might surprise a lot of people because people say Brady's 43 years old, and I was one of the guys that said he could not throw the long ball. Tom Brady completed 401 of 610 attempts, Big C. Touchdown Patrick Mahomes completed 390 of 588 attempts. So Mahomes completed at 66%, and Brady completed at 65%, and they're in the top 3 in the league, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's about understanding the players that you're playing with. You got to understand with Mahomes and Brady, Charlton, they weren't throwing chase yards. That's what you were getting from Deshaun Watson. He had a lot of chase yards that just accumulate and you don't win. Matthew Stafford several years ago threw for 5,000 yards. He didn't have a winning season. Jameis Winston last year threw for over 5,000 yards. He didn't have a winning season. So it's about when those yards are accumulated. Statistics mean a lot to people who are losing. When you're losing, you're always concerned about your statistics. When you're winning, you say, look at the scoreboard.
Watch the scoreboard. And thinking of the scoreboard, and statistics do matter. You may not think so all the time, but I'm going to throw out a stat. And it's like a preview of what's going to happen in Super Bowl 55, in my opinion. Mahomes, 38 touchdowns. Again, he didn't play in his final game, but 38 touchdowns. He only had 6 interceptions. And the remarkable thing about that is his QBR when he's blitzed is still 95. That's incredible. His overall QBR rate is 108, Big C. Tom Brady 40 touchdowns, but he threw 12 interceptions, and his QBR rate is 102. Brady is not the same young Brady, of course. He's 43. But when they blitz Brady, he has no options other than to get rid of the ball quick. That means that, in my opinion, Kansas City has to play press, bump and run. Because if you're blitzing this guy, he can't get away from the blitz. So everything he throws is going to have to be a quick pass. He can't hold the ball 3 seconds, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if you look at Brady's entire career, Brady has not rushed for 200 yards in his NFL career over 20 seasons.
Yeah.
So it's always been about throwing the ball. He's never been known as a mobile quarterback. He's always been a pure pocket passer. And when you look at Brady's statistics, if you want to look at statistics, these are the second highest statistics that he's had in his career. The only time he had higher numbers than what he has right now, he had Randy Moss playing on the team. Randy Moss had over 2,000 yards receiving.
Yeah.
Tom Brady had over 5,000 yards passing and 50 touchdowns. This is the second highest productivity of his career, being in Tampa Bay. And he's in the Super Bowl once again.
Yeah, that defense has done it too. I mean, it's a lot of good stats when you look at it, when they break it down for the guys that do the prop betting. When I think about this, I want to throw this to you. When you throw the ball over 40 yards, Brady's done it 50 times. Touchdown Patrick Mahomes, 75 passes over 40 yards. That tells you a lot about how you can get to him if you blitz him and play bump and run. Don't sit back in zone and watch him pick you apart. Your thoughts on Patrick Mahomes, over 40 yards, 75. It's amazing how many times he's done it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you have the speed core that he has at wide receiver, Charleston, this is something you do.
Yeah.
You always take a chance, but you have to understand the smart savvy of Brady getting to this point. I mean, when you talk about Brady, Brady's leading the playoff quarterbacks in passing yards in every statistic.
Yeah.
He has better statistics than any other quarterback in the playoffs. So that shows me he has no fear.
Yeah.
He has the experience, Charlton, more than any other quarterback in the playoffs. Even his opponent in the Super Bowl, Mr. Mahomes.
Yeah.
So when it comes to savvy, Brady has not seen a defense that he has not recognized in the NFL. He's seen the Chiefs before, Charlton.
Yeah.
He's seen the Chiefs 4 times in the last 3 years. So he's not, unaware of what they're going to do defensively. He understands Spagnuolo just like Spagnuolo understands him.
Yeah.
You have to understand football is a game of cat and mouse. It's not about having the fastest quarterback in the league. Otherwise, Lamar Jackson would be playing in the Super Bowl. Deshaun Watson would be playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But they're sitting at home watching. When you get to the Super Bowl, it comes down to a quarterback that can throw the ball, that can be a field general, who can break down what the strengths of a defense are and manipulate those. That's what Brady has been able to do in the NFL for 20 years.
Yeah.
No defense has figured out Brady. Brady has figured out every defense.
Yeah, it's amazing. And just for some California knowledge, before we come up on the Big C pause, Tom Brady was at the first Cal High Combine camp in Northern California. It was at historic Napa High School over in Wine Country, just north of San Francisco, Big C. They didn't cut the grass, and people were like, what kind of field is this? It's one of the most beautiful stadiums. They restored it. But Napa High School, and that's where they had the first combine, and the second one was at St. Mary College over in Moraga. And if you think about it, all of these players that you see playing in the NFL, most of them, they went to some 7-on-7 camp, and they learned to sharpen their skills. So for a lot of young players, you may be the best player in your league, you may even be the best player in your section, but if you don't get out and go to some of the combines, you don't get noticed because teams don't spend a lot of money sending players or representatives out to see you scout your high school football game. We're going to take this call, the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about guys down in Las Vegas that pay a lot of money hoping that they can win. We're going to take the pause, and when we come back, in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are grown with Big C Sports. I want to thank Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, Let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. You know, Big C, I saw a lady had a pickup truck in California. It's a big, beautiful truck, Big C. And she had a sign across the window of that truck. She said, I wanted a truck for my husband, and I got to get trade. She traded her husband in for a truck. That's not right, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's a ride that you can stay in for a long time, Charles.
Yeah, and unlike the husband, the truck came with heated seats. So if that makes sense to you, ladies, be careful, husbands, when your wife go truck shopping for you. It's all fair in love and war. And speaking of truck shopping, Big C, the largest reported bet in Super Bowl 55 so far is on the underdog, because you only make money on the underdog. That would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You never want to throw your money on a pirate, if that makes sense. Anyway, they're so unpredictable, the Pirates. It happened Thursday. A bettor in Nevada placed a $2,300,000 wager on the Buccaneers. They're a 3.5-point underdog, Big C. What the sports book is called BetMGM. If Tampa Bay covers the spread against the Kansas City Chiefs, that bettor is going to net about $2 million, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, you got to keep an eye on who's counting the cash when somebody makes a bet like that, Charlton.
Yeah.
But this is what we see in the Super Bowl, and even in the playoffs, we see guys rolling up, making bets of this nature. There was a guy who made a bet on the Chiefs and Bills game, Charlton, who had a $1.8 million payoff taking the Chiefs in that game.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. If people have that money to throw around, go ahead and throw it around. When you can put down $2.3 million, that just shows you that not everybody's suffering from the COVID shutdown. They're just rolling, and I guess that's what they call high rollers, but I wish them nothing but the best. I also want to just bring up something because of COVID, and I'm asking people, wear your mask, socially distance. Just do that because it's a thing to do. If you can get tested, get tested. I've had my test, and I've tested negative, but it doesn't mean you're going to stay negative, but just get the protocol. I also am so grateful for medical science, Big C. Washington football team head coach Ron Rivera, you know, he was fighting cancer. Imagine going through a COVID-19 season where people are canceling games, people are just closing business, and then dealing with cancer. At the same time, you're trying to run a professional football team. And all the things that went on in Washington, Big C, Coach Ron Rivera, he made a statement that he's cancer-free based on his treatments, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he was cleared after week 4 of the NFL season that he had received his final cancer treatment. So he had been going through this treatment while he was with the Carolina Panthers prior to getting the job with the Washington football team.
Yeah.
And he continued his chemo treatment, you know, Charlton, after joining that team. But after week 4 of the season, he was declared cancer-free.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy for him and anybody else going through anything. It's how you live, rise and shine, no matter what it is, always rise and shine. Congratulations to Coach Rivera for following the advice of your medical doctors. And it's great that we have a president in office that's making sure that we don't try to throw out Obamacare. If you recall how dumb and asinine that was to have a commander-in-chief saying we're going to cancel Obamacare because he didn't like it, because a black man had his name on it. And so many people have benefited from being able to go to the doctors, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, everybody deserves an opportunity to get medical assistance in America, Charlton. What's supposedly be the greatest country in the world, and to deny Americans medical care and coverage, Charlton, is an abomination.
Yeah, so thank God there's a lot of things that are turning around. Rise and shine no matter what. I want to ask you a couple questions. It's not about putting down $2.3 million to see if somebody's going to win a bet. But if the defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs, win the Lombardi Trophy for the second time in a row, just how high can their ceiling go? I mean, if you think about it, Big C, with 2 future Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, and then you look at head coach Andy Reid, and you know Brady's going to be Hall of Famer. If they lock up the foreseeable future, what lies ahead for Kansas City, it really could be historic, and the stats bear that out. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, what we've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs over the last 3 years has been historic. We have not seen numbers put up by a football team like this since the inception of the NFL.
Yeah.
The consistency that they've come out with, the firepower that they had. And when the defense needs to turn it on, they've shut down opposing teams, Charles.
Yeah, they've shut down opposing teams, and they're consistent. Just imagine they're back where they started or where they ended the season last year, and that was with the Super Bowl championship. And they're trying to do it again, and they're the odds unfavored to do it unless there's some type of shenanigans going on. It just seems like they're the team that can do it. Thinking about this, home or away, it makes no difference, Big C, for Kansas City. The Chiefs have won 11 straight road games. 11 straight on the road, Big C. Not only is that the longest active streak in the NFL, but it also tied for the third longest streak of all time, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, this is a team that's comfortable regardless of the environment that they're in, Charlton. They haven't lost a road game since last season. So you think about how comfortable they are going down to Tampa where they beat the Bucs earlier this year.
Yeah. It's something about, you said this before, but when you're on the road, you don't have all of the I guess, distractions that you may have if you're at home. And, Kansas City's on the road, Tampa's at home. That just might be another thing that weighs in the factor for the Kansas City Chiefs. You think about it, 9 times, Big C, just call Mahomes the comeback king, as the Chiefs have come from behind at least 9-point deficit, Big C, in 4 of their past 5 postseason games, Big C. Your thoughts?
This is a team, Charlton, that does not get rattled when they're behind. They just go out and they execute the plays that they call. They can only play one play at a time. I mean, fans get all excited when they see the Chiefs behind, but they also got to have a little apprehension knowing that this is the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes is playing quarterback.
Yeah, you don't want to play from behind too many times. It's not like they did it on purpose. They got to stay more focused in the first half because a lot of people thought the Green Bay Packers would be playing the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 55, but the Buccaneers and those defensive backs that hold, they had their other plans, if that makes sense to you. Think about the number 5. In those postseason games, you have tight end, touchdown Travis Kelce. He shined, Big C, both in 5 career playoff games with at least 100 receiving yards. That's the most by a tight end in league history. You think about Kelce's 13 catches and counting, Big C, it tied the single-game postseason record for the most touchdown catches with what I thought was maybe the greatest tight end in the history of the NFL, and that's touchdown Kellen Winslow, Big C. Played for the San Diego Chargers. He was also on the receiving end of touchdown Dan Fouts back in the day, Big C, under Eric Coryell. That 1981 AFC Divisional at the Miami Dolphins, and Sterling Sharp in the 1993 wildcard game at the Raiders, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you think about those outstanding players, Charlton, and the history of the tight end in the NFL, and what we've seen, so many of them have gone to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But when we see Kelce's numbers, they are striking, Charlton. I mean, this guy could have led the league in receptions and yards, but he's decided to sit out the last game of the season to be fresh.
Yeah.
And you think about the 2 playoff games that he has played in, Charlton, he's had well over 100 yards receiving in both of those and double-digit receptions.
Yeah, that's amazing. But I want to ask you a question because we talked about it before, how the Raiders had those great DBs. Jack Tatum was doing his thing. I really love Lester Hayes, Lester Stickum Hayes. He would stick to guys like he had glue on his hands, if that makes sense to you. But when you think about Kelce's doing his thing, but could you imagine, as good as Kelce is, if Kellen Winslow was playing in today's game with a guy like touchdown Patrick Mahomes? I know Dan Fouts is a Hall of Famer too. I think if anyone were to look at it realistically, you could say that touchdown Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback than Dan Fouts. That's just my opinion. How about you rank Kellen Winslow and Travis Kelce if you had to choose between one of those guys to represent, say, the AFC? Big, for your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, I think they're both quite similar in skill set. I mean, Kellen was a unique, hybrid tight end at the time when he came into the league. And what we're seeing now with Kelce is a similar type game that Kellen played. And they were both split out wide. They were both put into motion. They were nightmares for secondaries because they created that mismatch problem.
Yeah.
Both standing at 6'5" and had the speed to go deep, as well as not being fearful of going over the middle.
Yeah. How would you, in your opinion, how would you grade Sterling Sharp compared to Kellen Winslow and Travis Kelce. I know Sharp, these guys are known for weightlifting, and they've been probably working out at the gym right now as we speak, getting their groove on, Big C. I don't think in the same category as Kelce and Winslow, or would you disagree with that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when I look at Sharp was a wide receiver when he was in college. He grew into the tight end position.
Yeah.
So he had that skill set. You got to look at the offense that he played in when he was in Baltimore and when he was in Denver, Charlton. He was called a lot more on to do blocking than he was to go deep.
Yeah.
But you got to look at when he retired also, the statistics that he put up. He was the top receiver in NFL history when he retired from the tight end position. So his skill set was right there along with those guys. I got to put those three guys, Charlton, in the top 5 tight ends of all time. I got to throw Tony Gonzalez up in that mix, Charlton.
Yep.
But right now, Kelce is going to pass all of everyone's record.
Yeah.
If he stays healthy.
Yeah, and Tony Gonzalez also played basketball for Cal Berkeley Golden Bears as well as football. He dominated on the hardwood and on the football field. When you think about the number 100, Big C, when Kelce hits the 100-yard receiving mark, this is just incredible. In the postseason, it's good news for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're 5-0 in those games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the only game that they lost, Charlton, you think about it in the postseason, is the game that they lost a couple years ago to the Kansas City, to the New England Patriots in
the
overtime.
NFL, yeah.
And so that's the only game he didn't get to that mark because he got knocked out of that game. If he had stayed healthy, I think he would have helped propel the Kansas City Chiefs to a victory, and they would be on their 3rd consecutive Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's just amazing because running backs, they're known for getting the 100-yard mark. And people think, the 1,000-yard running back's great, but you don't have to run for 100. If you run for 100 yards in every game as a running back, you're going to get 1,600 yards. Very few people get 1,600 yards. Usually 1,000 yards is considered a great running back. But receivers to get 100 yards in a game, if you do that for 16 games, that's 1,600 yards. Well, Kelce's right around 1,200 yards over almost every year, it seems, Big C. Think about the number 8, Big C. Winning back-to-back Super Bowls is a unique feat. Not many teams have done it. The Chiefs will become the 8th franchise in NFL history to do so if they beat Tampa Bay on February 7th. Big C, your thoughts?
The hardest feat in football, Charlton, is to repeat. And to repeat as champions. I mean, to get to the Super Bowl is one phenomenal feat within itself. And to be able to repeat and go back-to-back as winners, only 17 teams have done it prior to this.
Yeah.
And if the Chiefs do it, they'll be the 8th team to do it, Charlton. But this is a team that's built to build a legacy.
Yeah.
And so I think that the Chiefs understand everything that's in front of them going into next Sunday's game down in Tampa.
Yeah, I think some of the most dominant players that I thought physique-wise in Kansas City was Derek Thomas when he played, the late Derek Thomas when he played for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then also, if you look at Christian Okoye, those two guys were amazing. But it's ironic that you look at touchdown Patrick Mahomes, which is probably the greatest player to ever play for the Kansas City Chiefs franchise. And even when you add him with, Travis Kelce, they're not the most physically chiseled. So much for lifting weights and doing all the stuff that we tell guys to do in the offseason, Big C. But think about this number 7. It's important, especially for the odds makers in Vegas. The Kansas City Chiefs, Big C, would you believe they've won 7 straight games against NFC teams dating back to 2019, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I guess that would correlate with the number 8 you're talking about, Charlton. If they win the Super Bowl, that they'll be the 8th team, Charlton, to have won back-to-back Super Bowls. And since they've won 7 consecutive games against NFC teams, Charlton, they need this number 8 to make number 8.
Yeah, you sound like you're getting a clue. You sound like Tony Romo. Someone's down in Vegas listening to Big C Sports, and you're giving them play the number 8, if that makes sense to you. Dial it up, the number 8, you'll probably win a big number if that makes sense to you. It's all fair and level word. Think about the number 10. With Super Bowl 55, the Kansas City Chiefs, they would join 9 other franchises with at least, think about this, 3 Super Bowl titles out of 55 Super Bowl. That's incredible, Big C. Your thoughts?
It's very hard, Charlton, and we have a couple NFL franchises that have never made it to the Super Bowl. When you think about teams in futile like the Cleveland Browns, the Detroit Lions, Charlton, who have never had a chance to even have an attempt at the Lombardi Trophy, and the Chiefs are going for their 3rd. The Chiefs were in the inaugural Super Bowl down in Los Angeles, California, where they lost to the Green Bay Packers, and then they were able to come back last year and win Super Bowl 54 against the San Francisco 49ers. Now they're looking for their trifecta in Tampa against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Isn't that amazing? There's so many great numbers, and you have so many odds makers that put up things in numbers, and it all makes a lot of sense. I'm going to throw one more number out because I know to me, it just makes it so fascinating. Think about the number 8, Big C. You know your friends down in Las Vegas that follow Big C Sports, Big C. The number 8. Kansas City would become the 8th consecutive number 1 versus number 2 seed to win the Super Bowl. The most recent Lombardi winner that wasn't number 1 or number 2. It was a 4th seed. The Baltimore Ravens, they did that back in 2012 with that great defense that they had, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, and in this game, Charlton, this won't be a defensive battle in this game with the two great offenses we have. We're going to see some great defensive play in this game, but these two quarterbacks were built to shine, Charlton.
Yeah.
Brady has had consistency throughout his 20-year career. Patrick Mahomes has been nothing but a highlight reel in his brief career.
Yeah, it's amazing. Tom Brady's played, he will have played in 48% of all Super Bowls since he was drafted the 199th pick in the 2000 NFL draft, and that's just incredible. Almost 50% of all the Super Bowls, he's been a part of that. So I wish them nothing but the best. I know there's going to be a different kind of media preview going into Super Bowl 55. It's all fair and love and war. But for all the media guys that can't go to Media Row, I hope that you can all enjoy the Big C Burger. It is a tasty burger. It comes with exotic meats, and it goes great with the Budweiser Zero. It has 0% alcohol, and it goes great with the Big C Burger. Speaking of big, I always feel that people should have an opportunity. But as a coach, if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and Coach Tomlin, I know that people want to have some loyalty to the players. I think what separated late coach Bill Walsh from a lot of the new coaches now, Big C, he traded Joe Montana when he still had some gas in the tank. He got rid of Ronnie Lott. You know, he got rid of even Roger Craig. Jerry Rice played later after Walsh retired, but he got rid of one of the, many people felt, and they still do feel, that Montana was one of the top quarterbacks of all time. But he never waited until guys were on empty before he traded them. So I want to ask you this question about loyalty versus being prescient, Big C. You have Big Ben Roethlisberger in the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been there for a long time, over a decade. Coach Tomlin's doing his thing with Big Ben Roethlisberger. Big Ben said that he's willing to take less money to help the team to the 2021 season. He threw $41 million. Keeping Big Ben, I think, prevents the Steelers from winning another Super Bowl, maybe even winning a playoff game. It's my opinion, but he's not mobile, and he really can't throw the deep ball very accurately. The Steelers are 0-3 in Big Ben's last 3 playoff starts. If Bill Walsh was the coach, they would have traded him before he ran out of gas. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, things were different when Bill Walsh was coaching, Charlton. There wasn't this salary cap implications that are stuck in contracts now that teams have to deal with, where you have dead cap money and you can't go out and sign players. Big Ben is the last quarterback standing from his draft class. Eli Manning retired 2 years ago. Phillip Rivers just retired, and Ben is still hanging on by a toenail.
Yeah.
But, that's the problem with the modern NFL is when you're signing these quarterbacks to these huge lucrative contracts, you can't move off of them because you had dead cap money, which you're not allowed to use to sign other players.
Yeah.
So it comes down to Ben working with the team. I know he's in there crying and begging that he wants to be around, but he has to make it worthwhile for the team, Charlton, if he's not willing to retire.
Yeah, I think, in just my opinion, if you look at the writing on the wall, and you look at what's in Super Bowl 55 from the AFC, you have a mobile quarterback and touchdown Patrick Mahomes. You even have, if you want to say Superman, Lamar Jackson in the AFC, he's mobile. Baker Mayfield for Cleveland in that same division is very mobile. Even somewhat mobile is Tannehill down in Tennessee, Big C. No matter what's going to happen in New England, Josh Allen's very mobile in the AFC for Buffalo. If you keep Tua, he's mobile, but he's not ready yet for Miami. If you're going to be contending in the AFC, I think Big Ben puts you at maybe a 7 or 8 seed. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Steelers, what you saw early in the season when they were going 11-0, Charlton, was a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
This team was not built to go far. And Ben's arm got tired as the season went on.
Yeah.
But it's not about the ability of a player anymore. It's about the ability of the general manager to be able to work the salary cap.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at a player and say, this player is not benefiting a team, but it comes down to the salary structure of his contract and how it hurts the salary cap. And when you have Big Ben's contract accounting for at least, 22% of the salary cap, and if you lose Big Ben off the roster, that's 22% of the salary cap. You don't have to go out and get quality veteran players. Those are the things that are in consideration. It's not always the player statistics. It's the financial ends that the team must come to.
Yeah, they gotta come to that conclusion. So whatever happens in Pittsburgh, I think they'll make those decisions. There are a lot of marquee quarterbacks that are on the move, willing to change zip codes. And with the changing of a zip code, maybe, just maybe, they'll get into the playoffs and have another chance to run at Super Bowl 56 coming up next year. But it's all fair in love and war. I want to get your thoughts on something that's important. I know we talk about it all the time. I even heard some of our brethren repeating some of the same things we talked about on yesterday's show, Big C. But it's all fair in love and war. And you talked about it too, that Rooney Rule, just get rid of it. It's insulting. It's like the woman that wanted to trade in her she wanted a truck for her husband, and so she got and traded him in, and he thought he was getting the truck. She traded him in and kept the truck. I think that's funny. But the NFL, they need to get rid of the Rooney Rule and have what's called the Big C rule. And I mean that. Corporate America is the Big C, but the NFL, they say they condemn racism and the systemic oppression of black Americans at every level. I know they endorsed the Black Lives Matter, Big C, and that made the chagrin of many people that did not understand. It's not saying anti-white, it's just saying treat black Americans the same way you treated white Americans. Even the offensive player for Seattle, they let him go. I'm not going to mention his name, but he let him go for battery against a woman. Happened last week. He's still not in jail. He has a hearing coming up on Monday, and he was tased at USC. He was also tased in the incident that happened up in Seattle. They didn't shoot him. They did not shoot him. They didn't necktie him. They didn't choke him out. He's out free, Big C. And the prosecutor asked for more bail money, and the judge said, no, we don't want to have the bail too high. So the system worked for him. So when it comes to the NFL condemning racism, they've already seen how law enforcement is white-skinned privilege. What would you offer to the NFL to get black men to get the same treatment that black men get? Your thoughts?
Charlton, there's nothing you can offer them. I mean, these are white men that are in control. It's just like you state all the time. If you want to have your own, you got to go out and start your own. You can't sit there and let somebody else condone or condemn what you're doing or not doing, Charlton, and that's what the NFL is. You got 32 billionaires hanging out with each other. As I keep telling you, the commissioner is just a spokesperson. He is a mouthpiece. He's like a White House press secretary. He comes out and states what his bosses have told him. He has no control about any black or white coach getting a job in the NFL. That's duly unto the owners. You can set up a fine for an owner who does not interview or hire a black coach.
Yeah.
$200,000, Charlton. They pay the water boy that much money every year on an NFL team.
Yeah.
And so it's just like you say. If you want your own, you want control of your own, you have to go out and start your own. The Rooney Rule is not going to change the mindset of white owners in the NFL. I don't know why people sit around and even talk about it, even think about it. You're not going to go tell a billionaire who he has to hire. He laughs at you when you throw a fine on it.
Yeah.
You know, he said, do you want that in coin or paper money when you throw a fine at him?
Yeah.
So they're going to do what they're going to do. You know, you get an African-American coach that's hired.
Yeah.
He's 65 years old. He's waited 27 years for his opportunity. Everybody's happy for him to get the opportunity.
Yeah.
Just because somebody's young and everybody thinks they're an upstart, we're not in the room where it happens when that interview goes along, and that's what people have to understand.
Yeah.
When you're sitting down for a job interview, and I imagine most people who listen to anybody's broadcast have gone into a room and sit down for a job interview.
Yeah.
And felt that they slammed that job interview.
Yeah.
And then they get a call later on and said, well, we're going in another direction from that organization.
Yeah.
Most Americans have heard that, Charlton, just like guys who go in and interview for coaching. You have to understand there's at least a half a dozen coaches They go in every time that there's an opening, hoping for that potential. It comes down to the guy that owner feels the most comfortable with, that general manager feels the most comfortable with, that's going to get the job.
Yeah, and we know in order to get something, you got to ask for it. I want to ask your thought. We talk about equality, and I'm proud of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris for making it it's mandatory that they're addressing racial inequality in the United States of America, even for dumb people that think it does not exist, like the past administration. So I'm proud of that. But think about this. NFL football, America has a black man as a president that got 2 terms in the United States, President Barack Obama. We've had our first black woman vice president in the United States, Kamala Harris. The black population of the United States is only 13%, Big C. Think about NFL commissioners. I know they work for the owners, but it's important. 13% of the United States population is African American. And oftentimes it's the black vote that got the president elected or kicked out of office. NFL commissioners, I'm just going to mention 3 that are very popular over the years. We had, right now, Roger Goodell. I remember Paul Tagliabue, Pete Rozelle. The league is the best league in the world. In fact, NFL is the best league in the universe. Think about this, Big C. Will we ever have an African-American commissioner? The league is dominated by 75% African-American men. So if 13% of the United States population put a black man and a black woman in the White House, we have an NFL league, the most popular in the world. 75% are African-American players. Will we ever see an African-American NFL commissioner, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, 96% of the owners in the NFL are white. And what you're saying is that you're going to go tell those white guys that they have to hire a black man to run their show. That's not going to happen.
Well, people said the same thing before President Barack Obama and Kamala Harris because they had more difficult odds to overcome. And I think it will happen.
No, they didn't have 96% of the population that they had to overcome. Shad Khan is the only minority owner in the NFL.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that you're going to go tell all these white billionaires, you might as well make a black in charge of Wall Street, Charlton, if that's the case in New York. What you're saying is that you're going to tell these guys how to run their business. You keep saying, I know many a times on our broadcast, if you want your own, you got to go out and start your own so somebody can't tell you what you can and cannot do. These guys, Charlton, are not going to turn over control of their organization to a black man, plain and simple.
Yeah, well, I would like to think that things will change and that other people have a decent heart and maybe that opportunity will come, but people have to keep asking for. I know Damari Smith is part of the NFL Players Association. There was a time people said that would never happen too, but it's just about progress and opportunity. Even if you look at the NBA, I think the NBA is more open-minded for men of color. The NBA is dominated by black men. Think of some of the great commissioners. You think about David Stern and then right now Adam Silver. Is there any opportunity? We know there are for black men in coaching in the NBA. There have been a lot of opportunities, especially as an athlete in the NBA. There's been a lot more opportunities as head coaches in the NBA, even though they get hired and fired just like their counterparts, Big C. Will we ever see an African-American commissioner of the NBA before we see it in the NFL, in your opinion, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, you won't. It's the same scenario in the NFL. You got all but one owners that are white, Charlton. These guys are not going to turn over their control. When you talk about presidents of the Players Association, DeMario Smith, Charlton, as well as in the NBA, the reason why you have a black person in those roles is because predominant number of players in those leagues are black, so those are the ones who are voting on those situations. When you have the role of a commissioner, you have white men voting on that situation, so they're going to invite somebody in, Charlton, that they're comfortable in speaking around. It's just like when Roger Goodell came out and made the statement after the players put the demand on him back in the summer. He said, we as the NFL condemn racism and systemic racism in America and the oppression of black people. He said that after he was forced in that issue by the players, Charlton. But he didn't say that freely 4 years ago in 2016, 5 years ago now, when Colin Kaepernick took a knee. He stood by complacent with what the owners had took. don't you make a damn statement at all. And Roger Goodell was quiet as a church mouse pissing on cotton.
Yeah.
So don't think that all these things are sincere. Don't think that these guys are going to change their minds and their attitudes from the history that they've possessed their entire life. They didn't get their money by having a black man telling them how to make their money, Charlton. They made their money by having black men working for them.
Yeah. Well, those are very salient points. And it's one thing when people talk about we have to have the Rooney Rule, is it a good or bad thing? And I'm going to ask them those same commissioners, will you ever have a Rooney Rule for commissioners? Will there ever be diversity in the commissioner position?
Well, think about the Rooney Rule, Charlton.
Yeah.
They say you have to interview and give a black man an equal opportunity to be a head coach.
Yeah.
If they were sincere about that, Charlton, they would take away draft picks.
Yeah.
When you don't hire a black guy when you got an opening, you lose your first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
But they're not going to punish the team to that level. They punish them to the term of $250,000. You know what $250,000 is to an NFL owner, Charlton?
Not much.
They pay practice roster players more money than that.
Yeah.
The minimum money you'll make being on the practice roster is $358,000. So you think an owner gives a damn about $250,000?
Yeah, that's very well said. It's just a matter of more dialogue, and things have to change. Just
They've
the opportunity.
had the dialogue, Charlton. How long has the Rooney Rule been in place? It's been in place basically 2 decades now.
Yeah.
How many black coaches have been hired? Think about the last 5 years of the NFL. There's been more black coaches fired than there have been hired, Charlton, in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So you don't think there's been any dialogue? The dialogue comes and says, look, I will pay you the $250,000 fine. I'm not going to hire the black guy.
Yeah, I think that's a macabre way of looking at it, Big C. And I think
That's a factual way. Show me something that's different from that. Show me the owners that are willing to go out and hire. We know the McNairs in Houston are dysfunctional.
Yeah.
They hired a coach that had never been even a coordinator. Even though he was a black man, he's never been a coordinator at any team in the league, even though he's worked for 3 of them, Charlton.
Yeah.
He's never been a coordinator. He was the quarterback coach in Baltimore. We see that Lamar Jackson still has a lot of improvement to do. He said he took the job because he felt that Deshaun Watson would be the quarterback of the Houston Texans, and he was the quarterback when he took the job.
Yeah.
So you have to look at what they're looking at. They're not looking at the top-flight young black assistants because they don't want to have success from a black head coach.
Yeah, I mean, that's both ways of looking at it, and I definitely understand your opinion on that, but I do believe that anything going forward takes conversation, can't just give up. I want to close out on one final story. You know, I believe everybody should rise and shine, and I don't believe in the word never because it's always changed. Everything we see now, at one point in time, people said, oh, that'll never happen. Black president, black female vice president. Some people said never, but things change. But in the NBA, Big C, we had the first time in the history of the NBA that we would have 2 champions, 2 organizations that have 17 NBA championships combined. I mean, in their own. So the 34 total NBA champions matching up on the East Coast over the weekend. The Los Angeles Lakers, LeBron James, maybe he'll be the MVP. Anthony Davis, he was out for the Detroit Pistons game, but he'll do his thing. They're traveling into Boston. Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, them good old boys are waiting on them. This is what a lot of people want to see as an NBA Finals game. The history of Los Angeles Lakers, the history of Boston Celtics. Big C, this should be a galactic matchup on the East Coast. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the way that the Lakers are playing as of late looks like they'll be rolling into Boston, getting their butt kicked, Charlton. I mean, they did get spanked on the East Coast. They got spanked by Detroit last night, and they got spanked by Philadelphia the night before that, Charlton. So, I mean, we're a little over a quarter way through the NBA season.
Yeah.
I mean, contact me when the playoffs start and the games really mean something.
Yeah, they always mean something because if you don't win enough, you don't get to the playoffs. But it's all fair and level war. People, please rise and shine. Enjoy every day. Every day is a gift. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. And he would always say to Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, I got to get you to understand what dialogue means in the NFL when Jerry Jones won't even let his head coach speak at a press conference. But once again, I want to thank you, the frontline healthcare workers, Charlton, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They're always speaking about what they can do for people.
Always speak up. You have not because you ask not. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, my mama always says there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.